Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, we discuss the DEA still eradicating and arresting cannabis for the people. And we review the baffling ganja case of Brittney Griner, Russia versus America. 2 countries, 1 empty cart.
You are on 10,000 this morning, I see. And it is going to be a very, very fun episode. But of course, we're going to kick things off with the high of the week. And the high of the week for me, and I'm still cheesing kind of because this was a big deal, was the Cannabis Empowerment Day. The first ever Cannabis Empowerment Day for the city of Portland was yesterday in a public park. And it was the first time after nearly 7 years of an industry that the government actually celebrated and did any type of community event with the cannabis ecosystem there. There were all sorts of businesses there, cannabis companies that were licensed, as well as advocacy groups, as well as some of our grant recipients. Lots of presentations, nearly 30 different organizations and companies came out and presented and gave their little exhibit. And we, of course, had media. It was a great event. I had a fantastic time. And guess what? The sun was out the whole time, which is great in Portland. It's the perfect time to do it. And I got to visit all of the tables, and I wanted to highlight my favorite swag item. So I'm giving a shout out to Loud. Loud is actually a Black brand that is licensed in the city of Portland, and known for its fantastic and loud flower. I was actually very, very impressed with this. And you're probably like, what are we looking at? And we are looking at a rolling tray. Oops, upside down. And again, we're looking at a rolling tray. And it's not just a rolling tray. What I thought was pretty cool was this magnetic top that goes on it. Mostly because, when you're rolling your stuff out, you leave it out, it gets dried out, and it also leaves the smell out. And when you have the magnetic top, you can actually, keep things inside and keep the smell inside. So I thought that was really cute.
Yes, it is so cute. And I love it, especially because I am known to ride around with my rolling tray just in case, because, I always got the cannabis on me, and you never know when you got to bust it out and roll. And I am not one of those people that can roll in my hand. Therefore, I always got a tray near me. Okay.
Yes.
So I really love that. That is cute. My high of the week is also an event. However, is the event that is up and coming. It is on the Revels Block Party and Summit. So it is on August the 28th, which is a Sunday, from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Restoration Plaza in Fulton Street in Brooklyn, New York. So that's going to be really cool. I'm super excited to see. It's actually not far from my neighborhood, so I might check it out for a bit, you guys. And enjoy a block party. It's the summertime, so I love block parties. That's my whole thing. Love of being in New York. So I want to give them a shout out.
Yes, but also it's not just a block party. There's going to be all sorts of panels and things like that. So it's part education, part party. And of course it has to be a party because, somebody's birthday is coming up. Hey.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to have the link to the tickets starting at $35 in the description. And I definitely want all my New Yorkers in the city, check it out. If you come into the city that weekend, definitely take a look, see. But let's get into this hot topic number 1, because it is interesting. I have a whole like conspiracy about certain MSOs and different operators and big cannabis companies in the industry. So,
okay, so
it's not a theory, it's actually a conspiracy, because, a theory means that you're thinking about it versus like a conspiracy means they are conspiring.
Yes, it actually happened.
Yeah, so I'm just, laying down that law. And into that talks about Scott Miracle-Gro's Hawthorne unit. Now, if you don't know, let me tell you, Hawthorne is the cannabis side of Scott's Miracle-Gro, which is a very household, common, even I guess big farmer soil company. And so they have a cannabis side, that's Hawthorne. And we talked a little bit about them in New Jersey. They were the money behind New Jersey. They're the money behind quite a few cannabis policy movement forward in legalization and medical use. So they released their fiscal quarter, and girl, the tea is they are not making coin. They are like, sales are declining, and it is not at a slow rate. It is at a rapid rate, honey.
Yes, I mean, I dug into this a little bit more. So just to make sure that, we were understanding exactly what's happening. First of all, at the parent company level, the hit that the Hawthorne group took actually really impacted the parent company. They've been relying on that growth from the cannabis space, and the overall reduction was 26% at the top level, but it was driven by over 60% reduced sales in the Hawthorne's gardening area. And they are accounting for it, saying there's oversupply in the marijuana industry, meaning there's more flower out there than they're selling, and that is somewhat true. I also think that there's some challenges in general with people getting a little bit more educated around what to do with soil, people getting a little bit more tight. The same way you know how to stretch food a little bit longer, people are going to start implementing a lot more of those strategies because the inflation is causing everything to be a lot more expensive. So the things that are staying the same price for the most part, like soil, you start to, figure out how can I stretch that longer.
I totally agree. I feel like everybody uses Scott's Miracle-Gro. So, I just think that a lot of big companies are just going to see a decline in sales in general, whether you're big cannabis or big anything, because that is the state of the economy in America. And we just have to be real about that, period.
Right.
And then on the flip side, there is a big hit on cannabis just for the simple fact that cannabis been around for millions of years before Scott's Miracle-Gro. So as we get more knowledge, to your point, cultivators are like, this is cool, but we could do better, especially because as we move from unregulated markets and more education, more study, you're not just going to look at one soil base. You're going to try all the products. And this is America. It's a free market. Step your cookies up, Hawthorne, okay, and compete in the market that you're trying to be in. Don't be like, oh, it's oversupply, because like truly we know it's not oversupply, and we're going to talk about it later in the actual episode, y'all, so stay tuned. Why is not oversupply in the cannabis industry? Maybe it's too many people burning the supply.
That is the truth. I mean, but I do think that everybody's trying, seeing a downturn. You look at a recent article or report from Headset, which is one of the top data insights companies in the industry, and you're seeing a decline. Oregon has experienced a decline. There's about a really big 16% drop when you think of the month-over-month percentage of sales. And I don't know, I'm concerned that the narrative is turning, and it's taking that turn in the same time that we have a narrative around cannabis use causing people to do all these mass shootings, and we have a narrative around illegal cannabis companies doing trafficking, and that is something that is becoming linked at the legislative level in Oregon, for example, and it's no proof behind it. It's all narrative. And so taken all together, it starts to make, again, people start to say, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be looking at cannabis. People who are maybe looking corporate to cannabis crossover, we don't get the best talent because it becomes, oh, this stuff is still too risky because of these things happening. Meanwhile, I really feel like the industry is suffering because of overregulation and a poor taxation structure.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Because we know people are going to buy cannabis, period.
Yes.
And like, if nobody wants to buy your legal cannabis, just say that. Because we gonna buy the cannabis. We're gonna supply somebody. And if your cannabis just is not good, step your cookies up again. Like it's unfortunate that there is this thing of oversupply when we know a lot of people partake in cannabis.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm fighting it. Like I said, I'm talking about it a lot in Oregon. Just yesterday at the Cannabis Empowerment Day, had a long conversation about them feeling like that, Oregon has too many retailers. And I'm like, we don't got enough patience. Let's start there. There's not enough cannabis patience. Oregon has not done the work of actually educating. Oregon has not done the work of bringing along the health professionals. The Oregon Board of Medical Commission is still, really harassing people. So I definitely think that we are judging the markets pretty harshly, considering they ain't really found it on like the greatest of soil. We ain't seed the cannabis industry in the best soil is the best thing to say.
Exactly. Because all these people in jail for weed, trust me, somebody's buying it. And it was no oversupply. So,
yeah.
That we can make a whole main topic of it. And we don't want to do that because the tea is still hot. Because again, I have a reason why I think they lying about the oversupply. So let's get into hot topic number 2 because it is juicy. Now, Curaleaf, you are getting called to the forefront, okay? Because Curaleaf is a multi-state operator, aka MSO, within the cannabis industry, and they are known for being all across the country. Seriously. Very interesting where they get their money from, what's happening. There's a whole tea about it. Well, there's still tea about them because they are getting pulled off the shelves in New York City, okay? The New York State OCM was like, that's not how you do New York, okay? I don't know what y'all do out in California, honey, but y'all don't do that out here. So basically, Curaleaf decided, hey, we're going to start labeling our products different. Instead of using the wet weight measurement, they decided to use dry weight measurement. And that is how they started labeling their percentages. Well, people was not digging that, called them out, and they had to remove their stuff.
Yeah, they had to remove tens of thousands of product off the shelf. So to your point, where's the oversupply? I don't know. The fact of the matter is this isn't even the adult use market we're talking about. Tens of thousands of product off the shelf. It is still just the medical market where New York is still, barely just over, I think, 170,000 patients. We got millions of users here. So we haven't even begun. But this is also the second time Curaleaf has been in the news related to mislabeling in Oregon. And I have to talk about it because that is, again, the jurisdiction in which I'm in. But in Oregon, they were also needing to be pulled off the shelf due to an issue with mislabeling. They have a non-THC product that very much mirrors their THC line in their tinctures. And so they mislabeled all intended CBD line. I guess, I don't know what happened other than someone used something. We don't really know.
Okay, that's fair.
They got fined. Someone used something, an old man used something in Oregon that he thought was CBD. It turns out it was not. It was with THC, a lot of THC, because it's highly potent. And I mean, it's one of those what had happened was moments. And for a very big company, how is it possible? And we're not talking about, a couple $100 million. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar company. They're not just here, they're overseas as well. So, Curaleaf is setting a standard, and that standard can't be that we mislabel our stuff. Or in this case, in New York, we do what we want, even without talking with the regulatory office, because that is not going to happen in New York. It's not happening in a lot of places. If you are licensed, you're not going to do what you want. You have to follow what the procedures are. And in this case, the procedure was they had to petition that type of change in the regulation, even though other states are going by dry weight. And we can talk about why they're doing that in a second. You still have to petition for that type of regulatory or policy or administrative change. That might be an administrative change because it's not in the statute. Nowhere in the law does it say you have to do this. However, it's in the regulatory rules. And so going against it, that's the main reason why they got their stuff pulled off. So those two incidents, they actually got sued. They had to pay out a lot of people who took that CBD tincture and thought it was THC. And a lot of stuff came off the shelves. So I mean, I know what happened, but I don't really know what happened. Like, did they get a fine?
Yeah. They're not in jail.
They're definitely not in jail.
So we know that. We know that fact. They are not in jail.
And that's, I think that's always so curious to me. I'm sorry. I just have to say that sometimes these things be real egregious and not even a thought of talking about jail at all.
Right.
No.
Yeah. And, in New York, basically, to your point, they really don't know, they really don't know what they're doing. They're operating kind of loosely, and they thought they could get away with it. And if people investigate in New York, I also feel like, personally, where is the cannabis going? Right? Like, if you pull it off the shelf, are you going to be like Minnesota and put it in the back of the office? You know what I mean? Like, what is the procedure for that? Because Curaleaf, they are slick, sly, and everything in between. Okay, honey?
Allegedly, I will say, because I've never experienced any like direct thing, but I've heard so many things in different markets. And that's part of the challenge with being a multi-state operator is that in the last few years, all of them have done a better job in trying to have a more central leadership so that there were certain tenets that are followed. But it doesn't necessarily always translate to the experience in a specific state. In New York, I would say by and large, most of the multi-state operators have not been as pro-equity as I would like them to be. They're save for a few, and we've had to call them out in the past of like supporting things like pushing no home grow to former Governor Cuomo, who we know was willing to listen to the highest bidder anyway, allegedly. So it's like, to me, it's giving Florida field. It's giving,
but this is New York. There
and
ain't
that's
no
why
Florida.
OCM was like, no.
No, the OCM was like, And like, so word on the street, okay, we talked about testing a lot on our last episode. Let's talk about it right now. Word on the street is that if you switch from wet weight to dry weight, you are increasing the THC levels in the product. Therefore, you could price it as a higher THC product, correct?
You are not officially increasing the THC. You are in some ways artificially increasing the percentage that can be shown, because the dry weight is the bottom number, and that means it's smaller. And if it's smaller with the same amount of THC, it looks like it's much more percentage. It is a trick of numbers, if you will. And yes, a lot of states have implemented dry weight as their regulatory process of packaging and labeling. And it is, in my opinion, part of this whole push in the industry to artificially inflate the THC percentage in order to your point, price it higher. And I'm not even talking about price it higher for the consumer. It's also being priced higher to some degree for the retailer. It's happening earlier in the supply chain. Now, in the case of Curaleaf, they are vertically integrated, so they get to have all the savings all the way through. And yes, supposedly, according to these sources, the stuff is flying off the shelf. And so part of me feels like there's two things that we need to handle. The first is the consumer. Okay. This is for you. Stop buying your cannabis by the THC percentage. Ask for period poop. That's right. Period. All snaps, whatever. It is like, don't do it. It's like not buying your CBD in the gas station, right? But the reality is that THC percentage is an important number. If you are taking your flower and making it into something else, I can understand you wanting it to be a higher amount. But the fact of the matter is that there are too many ways that people are gaming the system to make consumers and buyers believe that retail buyers that they're getting something with a higher amount. So this is to me just another game. And again, it's a math game. The wet weight is more weight because water is in there too. Water has weight. And you put that on the bottom, the denominator of this percentage that you're doing with the THC weight on the numerator is going to be a certain number. It might be 20%. But after you make that denominator smaller and go into it in a dry way, that can move from 20% to 37%. It didn't change, though, the same amount of THC, though.
Right.
That weight did not change. So it's a trick, in my opinion.
Well, it's a trick that they did not get away with. They tricked themselves, honey. And we don't care how many states did it before, because as we know, just because you did it first does not mean you did it right. Okay. So, sorry, Curaleaf. Bye-bye.
Well, they're not gone from shelves all the way. You know, their stores are still open. They may get a fine. You know,
well, it didn't say anything about a fine, and maybe because it's in its preliminary stages. But I will say, of course, Curaleaf isn't going away, but bye with that trick that you think you about to play, and don't think you about to try to come up in here and try to change it, because our office is pretty smart. They got it going on, so you know you're gonna have to keep trying to go against and figure out the labeling thing, because basically they're saying that they're supposed to petition the ability to change the label.
Yes, and that means we got to pay attention. Like, we as the consumers, we as people who are constituents, do we want that label change, or do we want to know what the real weight is? Or better yet, maybe that percentage is not the most important thing, and we just need to know what that numerator is. Tell me that number. You know what I mean? And learn what that number actually means. But it is hard. Everything is done in most, like chemistry and all of the science here. You get ratios. You're going to get milligrams per kilograms or milligrams per milliliter. It is all about, potency and concentration is usually some sort of numerator denominator. So that makes sense. And I just think given the percentage, though, is where you have a challenge. If I knew that I had 20 milligrams per kilogram in a whatever I bought, it would tell me a lot of information than just tell me I have 20% THC. And by the way, that doesn't mean that they're the same. And so I do think that it's the percentage, and it's the fact that that's the only percentage. And remember, New York is now looking at adult use where they're going to be taxing by THC, right? Which I was vehemently opposed to for a lot of reasons, but we'll see whether or not this changes people going in the opposite direction now.
Right. Well, they are trying to get away with getting their THC tax real quick, okay? Because that is not going to help it. And so, I wonder where it goes allegedly when it's done. I wonder if the DEA comes in like SWAT and swoops down on the factory and busts up everything and pulls all the products from the shelves, put it in these big tins and run it out like a TV show.
I definitely know that did not happen in New York, but I think the employees had to remove it and they took that junk back to their manufacturing facilities. But that does not mean that what you describe is not happening in Oklahoma. Okay.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Now, we talked about oversupply. We talked about THC. We talked about all these things, but we have to talk about the DEA, because the DEA is literally like still eradicating, still suppressing cannabis in legal states too, not just unregulated areas.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into hot topic number 3, where the DEA released its annual report from 2021. Now, in this report, there are a bunch of different things that are mentioned, but we're going to start off first at the fact that it confiscated more than 5.5 million marijuana plants and arrested over 6,000 people last year for cannabis, working in conjunction with the local state.
I mean, the hypocrisy is like mind-blowing to me, that you have a state that is getting revenue from a new industry and you're working with the DEA in any way, shape, or form to still suppress and to still eradicate what you believe is hurting your industry. It's sort of it's given real white supremacy as per usual. It's given you don't really live in the land of the free and choice. It's given the government doesn't ever like to have competition. It's given a lot to me right now. I am constantly going back to the fact that the Biden-Harris administration ran on the fact that they didn't believe anybody should be in jail for cannabis possession or cannabis generally. And what's happening in a lot of these states that we see DEA coming in, we're still seeing racial disparities. It's still primarily Black and brown folks. A lot of cases, they're licensed in the state, and there's some administrative issue or error. And now that I work for the government, I'm just going to say this outright, and I already believe this as many times I've gone to the Social Security office and the DMV. The government is not very organized or very good administratively. So a mistake. Oh,
that's
wow.
The truth, Tito. That's the truth. That's why it takes so long to get everything. If you want anything from the government, it's going to take a million years. Period.
Absolutely. And the same mistake could cost somebody down the line with the change of like guard, somebody else come in and they're like, oh, this person has been out of compliance for however many months, despite the fact that the person may be sending something another way or whatever. This happens in my office. The difference is we don't send SWAT to their farm or to their production facility or the DEA. We don't work with them to go and confiscate all of their flowers and plants and product. We don't do that. We call them and we say or email, hey, guess what? It looks like you're delinquent. And then they're like, oh, but we did it but we put it in this. Oh, okay. And now we figure it out. It's the not caring about life, human life, the cannabis plant life. It's about that part of it that really I'm struggling with, because I'm tired of the DEA being involved still, because we have a federal government that has already admitted that we have a president that says nobody should be in jail for this. Why are they still being funded?
And he's mad old too. So, if he say that, then it must be true for him, because he's like 80. That's part of Prohibition days. He cracked the egg on the cast iron.
Yes, he absolutely did, and was absolutely part of that. And him saying it may have just been him reading the lines from a prompter when he could still read them. But it is, the fact of the matter is, like, it's not true, because it's not how they are leading. He is ultimately in charge of this agency as the president of the United States. So the fact that they're able to do this is problematic for me. We don't have a cold memo. The Justice Department technically can send the DEA in at any time. It's crazy. Meanwhile, FBI is down. So,
right. Well, okay. So this is also an increase from 2020. So in 2020, they said that this is over 20% increase in chopping down the plants, because they literally chop it and burn it. You know what I'm saying? Talk about a good sage session.
Girl, don't even joke like that.
This is I know, right? I know. I tried. I mean, you gotta laugh to keep.
They're burning perfectly good medicine for so many people that they could be using it for. Still not enough flour in the federal program. Like, come on.
Right. And then there's a 32% bump in how many people were arrested over the 12-month period. So this is, they are taking like over 700,000 pounds of cannabis during these seizures,
This
and
is
so
insane. What did you
yeah.
say the other states were? I know Oklahoma is up there because there are so many stories coming out of Oklahoma. Licenses are easy to get there, and supposedly there are a lot of illicit businesses that have now, fronting like they are growing hemp or fronting like they're growing licensed and regulated, but aren't. And I believe that that's an excuse. Most of the people that I've met there are in fact licensed because it's not that hard to get a license there. If you have land and you have a Oklahoma address and you got $2,500, pretty much you can get a license. It's not, and if you haven't ever had a previous felony, you can definitely be a caregiver. And there are a lot of cases of Black people. There's one really horrible one of a Black woman who was a caregiver, medical patient, and a medical licensed business owner. And she was out actually at a conference and her house was raided by the FBI, DEA, all of that, and her children were there. And there was no cannabis there, but they just, because she's doing well in her business, she must be doing something illegal. I find
Y'all
that
need to
troubling.
go up in there and figure out y'all bureaucracy and y'all system at the moment, because it sounds very much so broken. The other states was California, ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, and then Kentucky. Kentucky Lee is also in the pack. Yeah, I couldn't believe it was Kentucky too. But yeah, Kentucky is in the pack. For all of the people that's like, oh, well, there are people that's like, well, cannabis is booming because of cartels from Mexico. Honey, literally, this report says it's not. So don't use that as a fact. Okay, look at the data and the numbers, and the numbers are, it seems like they are rolling up in, they're not double checking their facts that if it's licensed business or not, and then just criminalizing people. That is just terrible. I would be pissed if the police broke up in my shit.
I mean, tore down her front door, had her kids on the curb, hands up kind of situation. I mean, I don't know. And she tells it and she definitely goes into tears. But point being is that they've charged her with things that there is no real evidence. And a lot of the things that I'm seeing coming out of certain states is about administrative issues. But here's why I brought that up. We were literally just talking about Curaleaf and what is hundreds of thousands worth of a product probably on a shelf that they've made this decision. They got THC in a CBD product somehow, or switch the labels on it and confuse that. All I'm here to say is that that big company is still relatively protected, and this individual who chose to be an entrepreneur and take the path of the green rush in a low barrier way is still in a racist state that basically was arresting people for little like roaches. We talk about years and years in prison. When we did in Oklahoma the Cease conference in 2017, it was the case that we were very nervous about cannabis consumption. Still, it hadn't yet legalized for medical use, and now you see a little bit more. But even still, they never removed the enforcement part of the state's thinking. The people in charge still, by and large, do not trust anyone who wants to be in the business or anybody that wants to consume. And let alone you that and you're a person of color, they definitely don't trust you. They assume you're a criminal.
That is unfortunate, and that is tragic because their new bells and whistles on their doohickeys for the military police in these small cities and states that can't even run in to protect children. They're making money from these taxes and getting all new types of bells and whistles just to roll up in somebody's home like SWAT when there's actually no danger.
You absolutely called out the cycle of damage that is happening in these places. And it is that cannabis tax revenue is filling the coffers of the state, which continue to over invest in police. They get more toys and the like, more advice and consulting with the DEA and the FBI. And then they come right back into the communities and do crazy shit. And yet, the industry still continues to thrive, which tells you a lot about what cannabis means as a plant to our bodies and our efforts to continue to use it. I mean, people, like you said, people gonna find the weed, even when there's places that it's like capital punishment, like in Saudi Arabia. People still gonna find the weed.
Hello. Exactly. So there's no such thing as oversupply. It's y'all market is caca. Y'all tried to do what's been done for years and years, and y'all, it's like when you get the what I want something, what I thought I wanted, and then you got this.
What you actually got. Yes.
Yeah, that is what the legal market is giving in a lot of states. Some states are doing a lot better. Some states are, but some states are not. And obviously, it's probably from California because you guys are literally eradicating and suppressing all of their things. Kentucky, because it's probably hot hemp. And y'all, I also read somewhere in these articles that I'm going to post that there was, because there's so many types of processed cannabis, is that they're going to start testing and processing the cannabis that they're confiscating, that are like the carts and the concentrates and stuff like that. So I'll be curious to see what that report says, because I have a whole thought around that, and probably won't release it unless we put some pressure on their neck.
Probably, but the reality is that they are more interested in destroying it instead of using it. They should test it. That should have been from the door. They should also use it in their clinical trials. If you test product and you recognize that you know everything about it from the chemical profile and it's clean product, then it needs to probably be used and not destroyed. Instead, it's being destroyed. So they say.
There's y'all oversupply. So yeah, so they say. Okay, it's shady today. And so we're gonna get even more shady about a very, very serious topic, our main topic, which is the baffling ganja case of Brittney Griner. And this is Russia versus America. Now, we are talking about places where Kentucky has no legal market. For the record, you guys, they are one of 19 states that do not have a decriminalization program. And if you check the description after the show is over, you'll be able to check out this paper on it, because it really breaks down what people are doing in these states that don't have decriminalization. Anyway, so they're saying that that's one of the leading places that they have confiscated a lot of cannabis. But this gives you an idea of how everything in Russia is not about cannabis, and how it really is about this woman being in prison, and that America may be pointing fingers at Russia, but America has 3 fingers pointing back at itself.
It's definitely a very, very layered, nuanced case. I was baffled by a lot of it, confused, and I've been breaking down the conversation with a lot of different people. I'm also like, is this really about cannabis? That becomes my first thought. Are we really somehow going to see a precedent that somehow helps us? Or are we just uncovering the hypocrisy of America? And so, yeah, I'm definitely ready to get into it. I know there are a lot of details that you have found out, and we're going to have to get everybody up to speed so we all talking the same tea, sipping the same tea, and talking the same language, because there's a lot to unpack in this whole story, to be honest. And it ain't good. It ain't good at all, actually. It's a little bit sad, some of this. And of course, I'm naturally worried about her as a human being, but it's a lot to unpack.
Yes, and you talked about it a few times on Flower to the People, so I definitely took quite a few notes, and we're going to pull this story out for you guys. So the backstory is that Brittney Griner is the most famous women's basketball player in this country, but honestly, in the world. And she is also part of the LGBT plus community, and she is 6'9", and she is, been in the basketball industry for a very long time. Like I remember as a kid, she was just getting into her seasons, but she has to moonlight because the WNBA pays her around $600,000 over 3 years, and so she's actually making $200,000 every year, or a little bit over that, right? And so she has to moonlight and get jobs in other places. Now, as a true zillennial, I would think, oh my God, like, why I don't see the reality show of it all? But, I digress. Anyway, so she started doing basketball across the seas because, let me tell y'all, in 2013 and 2014, she played for China Honey and made what she makes at Phoenix Mercury. And she only paid for 4 months there. So they throwing cash at her. Well, she decided to go to Russia. And it says she's estimated over 3 years, she made $1.5 million playing basketball in Russia. Now, I didn't even know Russia liked basketball, to be honest. I'm like,
Russia oh my God. Basketball.
Like, I'm like, I thought y'all like hockey and throw y'all kids in the skis and shit. Like, y'all like
you are
like Russia basketball? Like, it's not translating. It's not translating for me. Well, she was making millions. And so basically the internet is saying she makes her net worth is worth $5 million after starting to play in all these different things. And I'm like, oh my God, she made $5 million over this course of time, partially playing in Russia. I could understand why she was in Russia, but then again, there's a part of me that's like, Instagram, love and hip hop. Like, did you have to go to Russia, sis? Because 9 years later, or how many ever years later, I'm guessing 9 right now, off the top of my head. But basically a couple years later, she's now in custody, and it's unfortunate because she's been there for a long time, and she got caught with the empty vape cart. So, vape carts also, you guys, are only about a gram or a half a gram. Okay. Vape carts are not a lot of flour. I know when you hit that cart, you be like, ooh, I'm high. And it's like a whole scientific reason behind that. But like in actuality of like buying a product, what you're looking at, a vape cart is very, very rarely over 1 gram of cannabis. So
and
she got an empty thing.
Right. And therefore it's very rarely over $100, right? Like that is some crazy, we've been in some crazy markets where they'd be like $80 for this gram of whatever.
Like,
but
gram.
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all got no refill with this?
No refill. But yes, that's all of the things.
And that's why you also finish your vape cart in a week. Listen, you finish your vape cart in a week because it's only a gram of weed, y'all.
Yeah. It's a gram of highly concentrated weed. But no, here's the thing. At the end of the day, it was empty. Many of us have gone to legal states. You do something and it could be an empty cart that's just in your purse. I mean, real talk, like unless you empty out your entire thing. So even the mistake, it just feels like from a consumer perspective, very, very normal. But to your point, she's been going back and forth for some time. And so the reality is that she's been a vulnerability for America without us really knowing, because we ain't know she was moonlighting in Russia all this time. Okay.
Who knew Russia had women's basketball? Like, right. I'm like, what?
Exactly. But here she is. And Russian government, in their thinking and their strategy, I wouldn't put it past that they've known, and maybe there have even been incidents where that has been presumed, the knowledge of it. She's been using it medicinally for years. She testified, or had doctors testify, even after the pleading guilty, she still had testimony around what happened and what the mistake was and what she does with it in the United States. So when you playing and you're 6'9", she is not, even though that was the empty babe, I'm gonna be honest, I don't believe that she never came over ever with nothing. You know what I mean? Because you can't be over there in Russia and any place playing for multiple months and not getting something. But
and Russia's a tundra, so that means she was cold. You go from the desert to like cold as heck.
Yes, I mean, definitely. Who knows again weather? I know what that was like with Minnesota and the negative 25 degrees. It woke up pains in my body that I didn't even know existed. It was like, hey, you are now 80 years old. And here you go. So I listen, I'm feel for sis. So I'm not trying to say I'm incriminating her further. I'm just saying, to your point, she's been going over there for a while and they've been watching her for a while. And so here we are in a situation where they have leverage, even with an empty freaking vape cart. They probably thought they was going to catch her really with some shit. And in fact, it was nothing. It was nothing, literally. But it was something in their law, their paraphernalia law, their law, the fact that there might be a little bit of molecules and particles up against the wall of that vape cartridge. Whatever it is, it came into their country. And they have, in some ways, every right to deal with it the way they want. But at the same time, you know, I'm very much concerned about what does this actually mean? Is it really something for cannabis? Is it something that, you know, has nothing to do? I don't think for Russia it has anything to do with cannabis, nor do I think is it going to change any precedent or anything for them at all.
Right. Even though I will say Russia Wikipedia must be hacked, because they were saying that cannabis is illegal and possession up to 6 grams is an administrative offense punishable by a fine or detention for 5 days. So my question is, if it's empty gram, that's what Wikipedia say. I know that was some ghetto lookup, but I mean, it's Russia. I'm like translating sites here. I don't want them to hack my computer, so I'm only going so deep. And right now, it seemed like she had way less grams than normal. Is it because she's not from Russia that it's like a heavier fine or whatever? You know
I think it's officially not about possession. It's about the trafficking part, because she was caught coming from, you know, in a plane. So it's like, if they caught her on the street with it, it would be a different thing than going through security for basically their version of TSA.
Damn, you getting fined for trafficking some empty shit?
You're not getting fined. She getting 9 years.
I mean, well, I think she's gonna be home by Christmas, just because that is just what I think. And that they're not going to hold her for that much. Like, they're not going to hold her for more than a year, because really they have the upper hand. They have a few different people over there under this whole thing that they're even trying to umbrella through, and they want to negotiate something big, but you know.
But here's the thing, and that's to me why we got to kind of jump into like some of the present day conspiracies, because the fact of the matter is that you might be right about that. And the reason you might be right about that is because it isn't about cannabis for them, right? They want to negotiate. They wanted a prisoner, right, of war in the middle of their war. These are all coincidences, not really. She been there the whole time. Like you said, the backstory is important to know, because I did not know. For people who are finding out about her even being in Russia, we all was like, what the hell Brittney Griner doing in Russia, right?
Like, she Russian now? Like,
it just didn't make sense.
Playing basketball, I'm like,
but it makes sense now. Yes.
Ice cream cone.
You are so hilarious.
Yeah, like there's like, how do people even? I don't get it. Like, and I'm not gonna look for it either.
But no,
I don't even, because there ain't no footage of her playing no basketball I done seen.
You know what? I noticed that we haven't seen that. We see a lot of footage of her behind the bars in Russia, but you're right. We haven't seen any footage of her playing in Russia. They show some things of her work in the Olympics. So she's a 2-time Olympian and gold winner. You know, like it's a lot of different things. Maybe they also trying to prevent America from winning gold again. I don't know. It's conspiracies galore. But again, on Russia's side, it don't have nothing to do with the cannabis itself. I think, again, that was a loophole. It was a legal way to hold someone and now force America into a situation where they have to negotiate for some of the people that they have. And here's the thing, I feel like the people that they have, like they got names like Dr. War and things like that. It reminds me of the Con Air movie with Nicolas Cage, where you got a whole bunch of people, the wrong people all together in one spot. You trying to bring them over. Well, they trying to negotiate for one of those mofos. Okay. And that's when I'm like, is Brittney, like, I care about Brittney, but I also care about the rest of the United States and the rest of the world. You gonna let out the nuclear war guy in exchange for somebody who accidentally brought an empty vape to the place that they were moonlighting? And also, by the way, you still arresting people yourself because you got the same type of laws.
Right. That's why I don't get it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, basically the person y'all want to release can make a bomb for, 25 miles away from where he at. And you trading her for like basketball player, not saying, listen, she made money in Russia. We don't know how other than basketball. Okay. But there's, I don't know how basketball is going to save us from a nuclear bomb. So, I do think there's an element of like, one, we obviously need to stop spending all our money on eradicating and suppressing cannabis. Okay. And start figuring out our money on how many other of them over here, because they only got a basketball player. They don't have nobody else.
That's true. Again, I feel for her as a woman. They don't do well with the LGBT there. They are very vehemently against it and how they may be treating her. She's 6'9". So I just kind of keep reiterating that she's a human being. But her human status is no more than mine or yours or this old white man who's some teacher who got caught over there with his weed. He had been teaching over there and they put him to like 5, 6, 7 years of hard labor or whatever that means. The fact of the matter is that America is focused on this person because she has a following. And like you said, she's the most popular women's basketball player in the world. And Russia knew that. Russia knew that because she'd been over there and she'd been making buku money for them. So it's like,
with no sports highlights. You don't see her dunking on nobody. like where is the typical Russin things that I don't want to say out loud, but like,
but
she ain't jumping out no doors. Like there ain't no.
It's possible because Russia's like China and they know how to suppress their own media. It's very possible the minute that they knew they was going to like take her down, that or that it was her they had in custody, whatever it was, that they started to remove those things because they're very good for that too.
I'm sad to hear that because this is America. We like proof. Hello. Just like that. Look, we got that fake proof from their officers checking her things. Where's the proof she actually playing basketball, y'all? But I do feel like, to your point, America, this is the hypocrisy of America, because if she was in America, she would be under similar, like maybe not as long, but and people speak English, they speak her language, her native language, but she would still be in jail. if she was going through the Texas airport, like no, because our TSA agent's not looking for no drugs. They like, she ain't even El Chapo. What we gonna do? Let me take her vape. That's
possibly.
Might not do.
Possibly. But you know what? I wouldn't risk it because there was a woman who just went through, or a man, sorry, that just got caught in the Nashville airport. Now, in that case, he had a whole suitcase of multiple pounds of weed.
He trying to be El Chapo. That's something different.
He wasn't. I don't think he was. Necessarily, but you're right. She got an empty vape. Nobody's necessarily going to.
It's just I guess if it's more than, you're right. Honestly, there needs to be like, it shouldn't be that much. You should be able to have a suitcase worth of cannabis and not do anything on TSA. In my opinion,
I mean, because we know what the size amounts actually mean. Most regulation, most legislation, they're confusing ounces for pounds, right? When we hear somebody got pulled over with 109 pounds, like a person in Oklahoma did, okay, I'm a pause for a second, right? But a couple ounces on them, like what? And you mentioned that she would be in a situation if she was in America where she actually would be stuck and in prison. Certainly if she was not famous, like the young man who was on his way to Alabama and was an Arizona patient as well, same status, using his medicine for neural trauma from being a veteran. And he's still in jail.
Yes, still in jail, still trying to fight as they have some bootleg medical marijuana program that doesn't even have reciprocity, honey. How you got a medical program, no reciprocity? Like, shame on you, Alabama. That's why I can't even spell you.
You're
Anyway,
hilarious.
I'm just saying, but you're right. In America, you know, she's from she lives in Arizona because she plays in Arizona. And luckily for her, she got introduced into medical marijuana, which they've had for many, many years, and their adult use in 2020. So yeah, to your point, she'd be okay. But if she was flying out of her home state of Texas back home to Arizona and they found an empty cart or whatever, or driving through, she would be fined thousands of dollars, and she would go to jail for almost 180 days. Yeah, that's not, you know, that's not like 9 years, but that is a long time to have to be gone for 180 days. And 2005 is expensive in a like world of like inflation and recession. So this is
that's only the state's law. If you take into the account that you're breaking federal law when you're in airports, then she would be in the same place. She'd be in jail. Right. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, the federal government has the necessary changes action when it comes to certain things, federal land, federal buildings, and the TSA and the entire setup of most airports is also federal rules apply. And so if she was going through the airport, this is a similar thing with why it wasn't possession in Russia and why it was trafficking. Then in some ways she's trafficking as well. And again, I think it depends on how ridiculous the state leaders are. Are they working in conjunction like Kentucky with the DEA and are like, oh no, we're going to use this person or arrest this person? So I agree with you. I think that America has a lot of hypocrisy here. And that's why, as a person in the cannabis industry, although I am supportive of Brittney Griner being released, I do want her to be okay. I'm not so sure about this trade based on what I'm hearing about the other people. It's giving very elitist because it's sort of like if she was a nobody, we know she wouldn't be getting traded. It wouldn't even be a discussion. America would be leaving her there. What you going to do about this old white man who's the teacher there? What are you going to do about the thousands and thousands of people who currently here have federal cases and charges already on their record and incarcerated currently? If you're not talking about that too and your press conferences from the White House, because they've talked about Brittney there, then I'm wondering like what exactly, like how do you make sense of this for the American public?
Well, because they're just only linked. Well, I think Russia knows that cannabis is a hot topic. And because they're only linking it to just being a political prisoner of war, which we know that they're making it overshadow the understanding of what cannabis decriminalization is. And, you know, also making us forget what some of their roles are in the ability to lead for the people, because we don't need Congress to pass a law. We don't need them to codify it or whatever they want to call it. What we need, bare minimum, is the Cole memo. What we need is bare minimum, you know, the DEA not sitting at the border of Texas and New Mexico, because New Mexico is legal for cannabis, and stopping every car that is suspicious. Because one, we know it's not coming from Mexico, period. And, you know, New Mexico has legal cannabis. It's not trafficking if you have the personal amount of cannabis allowed in New Mexico on your body going to Texas. It shouldn't be trafficking.
It shouldn't. You're right.
You need to step your laws up, especially if you're a medical patient, which you would be.
Right. I think that's the other thing. It's like, even if I'm not, I still feel like everybody deserves the opportunity to choose how they're going to use cannabis, because there's some use out of it that can be gotten. And unfortunately, America has made it so that we are not getting at all any of the utility from this particular plant. It's a shame. Black and brown communities have bore the brunt the most, both in the criminalization and the lack of competency and knowledge. And this type of shit that's happening with Brittney Griner only makes us more ignorant about it, because the majority of people that I have seen talking about we should not be trading Brittney Griner, they're very focused on the fact that she was caught with an illegal substance, and that this is teaching people that they could do something wrong in America, come and save them. And that to me is sad to see and hear. It's not even that they're worried about the person they're being traded for, because that's my concern. It's like you said, if he could build nuclear bombs for, beyond 25 miles from where he is, or he's some secret assassin or whatever,
whatever movie.
Yeah, I don't know if I want the trade. I don't know if that makes sense, America. I don't. But it's not because I'm persecuting her, because, oh my God, I can't believe we trading somebody for weed. She's irresponsible. A lot of Black people saying that. And that's sad, because they don't understand that at 6'9", being an elite athlete, playing as much as she's playing and moonlighting as much as she's moonlighting, this cannabis is saving her life. And in fact, thank God she's had it as long as she's probably had it, because it's probably helping her endure while she has been under conditions where she's not getting any cannabis at all.
Wow. That's so powerful. But, I really need us to free the people explanation point, period.
Period. Stop. Full stop.
Right. Yes. So thank you guys for joining us. It's been a great episode. The tea is so juicy right now. It's like, a rabbit hole of things we could really go down this case, and what's happening in America, decriminalization, how we could decriminalize without Congress, state, federal, local. It's all can be done. So make sure you follow us, she_Blaze on IG. And if you ever get the pleasure to follow me, Cannabis Socialite on IG.
And that's because you are secret and hidden in your account. She's going to meet. You got to get her request approved. But everybody can follow me. I'm at Dasheeda Dawson on Twitter and IG. And of course, you can find us anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Where else are we at now? Everywhere. Audible.
Anywhere you can listen to podcasts is pretty much where we're at. Any app. And make sure you join us next Saturday at 12ish.
I like that it is 12ish. Sometimes that internet and technology is like, woo. Yes. But you can always listen to us later and binge us later too.
Absolutely. We not on Keisha Cole time, but we are on a little bit of CB time, y'all. So that's why it's the ish. Oh, Kurt. So let's get up out of here. Have a great Saturday. Thank you guys for joining us and listening to us anytime too, honey. Bye.
Bye.